This is Tashira Ayers, your host of the Tashira Ayers Show at 900 AM WURD. Thank you so much for joining us here this fine evening. And I have the privilege of speaking with a legend, a living legend, one whom we all are familiar with, particularly here in the Delaware Valley. Maya Angelou is here with me this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm splendid, thank you. And you?
I'm wonderful. You are a global renaissance. You are a novelist, an educator, an author. You name it, and you've done it. And I have to say, Ms. Angelou, it's certainly an honor to have you here talking to us this afternoon. You'll be in the Philadelphia area in a few days at Cheyney University for their Keystone Honors Academy event.
Yes, that's right.
And you'll be addressing some of the alum that are there, the existing participants, and the event is sold out, so a lot of the public will be there with you as well. Before we talk about that event, can you just elaborate on some of the things that you're doing right now?
Oh, Ms. Ayers, I'm sure you and your audience wouldn't like me to take up all the time. I've been working for 70 years, so you can imagine that I've done a little bit of most things. Some things I wouldn't admit, I wouldn't like to talk about, but most of them you can get online or somewhere and find out everything about me. Unfortunately, this being the age of information, you can do that about anybody.
Absolutely.
Including people's private phone numbers and their addresses. I consider myself, I'm a writer. I've written and published some 30-odd books and children's stories and television screenplays and television plays and some music. So when I speak to God, I try to talk to my Creator 45 times a day, I guess. But anyway, I say, Lord, you remember me, the tall black girl who, you remember, Lord? Well, the writer. And so I find that he hasn't forgotten me somehow. But that's how I describe myself to anybody. I'm a writer.
You're a writer.
That's what I do.
We are familiar with the pieces that have won Pulitzer Prize, and one of the first poets to be recited back in JFK's inauguration in 1961, all the way up until now, where, again, you'll be addressing the Keystone Honors Academy. So tell us what we can look forward to next week during the Keystone Honors Academy.
I'll probably speak about courage. I'm not sure, since it's not in my contract. I can talk about anything that I think people want to hear. But courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without it, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. You can be anything erratically, kind, fair, true, just, merciful, generous, etc., for a while. But to be that thing time after time and day after day, you have to have courage. And so I might speak about courage. I would use poetry. Because it's so wonderful, and I think it has saved a lot of people's lives, whether they know it or not, and given them spirit and hope. So, but I'm not sure. What would you like to hear?
Courage sounds good to me.
Me too.
Is that something that you've always had?
No, it's not something I've always had. I don't think anyone is born with it. I think you develop it over years. If you wanted to pick up 100-pound weight, you wouldn't go out and start to pick up you would develop the muscles to do it by picking up 5-pound weights and 10-pound weights and 20 pounds until you really could pick up the larger weight. If you want to show courage, you can't just, step out and say, I'm courageous. You might have bombast. That is to say, you may talk loud.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you're courageous. So you start developing courage in small ways. The courage to speak kindly to people. The courage to open your eyes and look people in their eyes. the courage to be courteous, the courage not to accept any cruel or vulgar statement which is supposed to describe you. And you can say, I'm sorry, that does not describe me, and don't call me that.
Right.
So you develop courage in small ways, and before you know it, you'll have courage in large ways.
And I'm sure that's something you've exercised over your life.
Yes.
Yeah, coming from a time before my time,
Yes, indeed.
Where you had to have the courage to step out and say, I am a poet, and you didn't call yourself this, but I would call you an educator in your own right as well.
That's right.
And to say, this is how I'm going to deliver my message through the form of poetry.
That's right.
And
there you are at Cheney in Philadelphia, and one of America's great poets lives there. And that's Sonia Sanchez.
Absolutely.
Wonderful poet and a friend of mine, but particularly. I read her poetry sometimes in concert, and I read it for myself to make me laugh sometimes. And her poetry is wonderful.
Miss Angelou, what keeps you going? What motivates you? What keeps you moving?
Miss Harris, I don't think I am owed anything. I'd like to be given courtesy, but every moment is a gift. There are people who went to sleep when I went to sleep last night.
Yeah.
Who will never awaken. Whose beds have become their cooling boards. Whose blankets have become their winding sheets. And they'd give anything for just 5 minutes of what I'm enjoying right now.
Sure.
Simply sitting here in the sunshine, talking to a pleasant woman who I have not met, but I'm enjoying the conversation. Maintain an attitude of gratitude. And that keeps me going. I don't expect that I was owed this afternoon, or I'll be owed tomorrow. I'm just grateful for having it. And I try to use the time constructively as opposed to destructively.
You've traveled all over, places that I probably can't even imagine. What are some of the simple pleasantries that you have, that you enjoy? Like you just mentioned, the sunshine, the simple things that you do when you're not making an appearance or you're not doing an interview on radio or television.
Yes. Well, I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy being talked to. And when I was very young, I didn't speak for a number of years. I was what was called a volunteer mute. And I would think of my whole body as an ear, and I could go into a room and absorb sound. So over the years, I learned to listen, and I think that explains why I've learned a number of languages, because I listen when people talk, and people like that. They may not think it consciously, but they realize she's listening to me. And so they like that. And they, in turn, it follows them that they like me. Ms. Harris, I think if you have another couple of questions, I will try my best to answer them. And then I'll have to end the interview.
Okay, not a problem. Again, you'll be here with us next week at Cheney University for the Keystone Honors Academy. And I'm looking forward to hearing all about courage from you, from a legend. One last question for you. The young people today, middle-aged folks today, and I know you haven't met everyone there is to meet, but there's clearly a difference in how we are now, I guess, versus when you were coming up.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean in family and relationships and how they're educated, in their lack of communication skills.
Yes.
What would be something you would recommend to those that will listen?
Well, I would encourage young people to read. Turn off the television and read. Read to each other. I think lovers should read poetry to each other. Read, even read an an article in a magazine that you find interesting. That's an intimacy that is as close as the one which people think of as the most intimate. But to read to another person, you begin to hear the melody of the language. I think that we older people did younger people a disservice. As soon as integration was lifted its head, a number of African American men and women said, "Okay, it's all over but the shouting," and just almost rubbed their hands in glee, and thinking that with the laws which said we could sit wherever we wanted on transportation vehicles or go to any school we wanted to enter, that meant that racism was over and finished. And not at all. Racism is very much alive and very unwell. So I think that one of the things young men and women are missing is that being told, as I was told, and people of my age and even much, much younger, we were told by our parents and grandparents and teachers, "You're the best we have. We're counting on you. You do it. Do the best you can. The race is counting on you." Mm-hmm. Well, young people aren't told that today. They don't know how important they are. So my encouragement to any teacher, any parent, and all parents, the parents are the first teachers, say to the children, be kind, and say to the children, we need you. We need you desperately.
Miss Angelou, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you,
I genuinely appreciate it.
Say hello to me.
I certainly will. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Take care. I will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, we were just talking to Dr. Maya Angelou, no stranger to any of us. She is largely recognized for her autobiographical volume, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. As I mentioned earlier, she's won Pulitzer Prize for her volume of poetry, Just Give Me a Cool Drink of Water. In 93, she recited on the Pulse of the Morning at Bill Clinton's inauguration, and in 1961, she recited the first poem ever to be recited at an inauguration was in 1961 at JFK's inaugural ceremony. It has been a pleasure, an honor to talk to Dr. Angelou. Again, next Thursday, March 22nd at Cheyney University will be the Keystone Honors Academy, and we hope that you have your ticket and hope you can attend. I look forward to seeing you all there, and a big shout out and love to Philadelphia's own Sonia Sanchez, who Ms. Angelou actually shouted out during our talk momentarily. I hope you've taken what she said and apply it to your life. She's going to talk about courage next week. She encourages us to read to each other, to ourselves, tell our young folks that we are important to our race, that they are counting on us to continue what folks like, legends like Maya Angelou have started. Dr. Maya Angelou, everyone, hope you enjoyed. Sit tight. This is the Tashira Air Show. We'll be right back.